I have 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes? Yeah. This is the worst part of this whole thing, sitting around.
I know.
Because I know we can't start before we're scheduled, or we're open to having everything that we've done erased and redone.
Yeah, once I have it.
Not so far. I'm not seeing them.
Not surprised.
The people who are local
I sent it to Judy.
at the store generally, it's not like they have all
Cashier,
this
they don't know
spare.
anything to do about it. Text me his address and I'll just email real quick and I'll just send it directly. He can start in about a minute. No, I'm in a meeting. I'm at City Hall. Yeah, just text it to me, I'll put it into Joyce and I'll shoot it over real quick. All right, bye.
When it's on the screen, I usually just get out and put it on my face, welcome to the, and I don't know if you didn't want me to do that.
They were super good. And he said, we're just booked today. Can you come in the morning? I said, no, I'm booked.
No, that's where I had. But are you okay with us starting? Start it, or go down here and let the slideshow over? Are you okay with
I didn't even know
this being the screen that I start with as opposed to the other one that you but
Put it on which one you want.
I'm scared too.
Tell me what you want.
I was trying to get it cleared up. I got 2 sunglasses I can wear. And I have to have prescriptions.
Yep.
I was like, damn it. See, to me, that's self-evident. The paper, there's my signature.
that's what I usually start with, if that's okay. That way I'm already in the.
But I don't know if it'll.
That was my question.
We don't need to.
Because it's got the, the agenda straight out of.
Are we ready to go? All right. Might as well start. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Steve DeLaRoche. I'm the Special Magistrate for the City of Daytona Beach Shores Code Enforcement. We have a couple of cases today. The way that we conduct business here is the city has the burden of proof. They will present testimony and evidence as to the existence of a code violation. If you are here to represent one of the parties that is before the board, I will give you the opportunity to ask the city questions. That is, to cross-examine them, just like you see on television. It is not your chance to testify. It is your chance to ask them questions. Who, what, why, where, why do you think this? Then, when the city is done with its presentation, I will give you the opportunity to present whatever you want. You can show me pictures, you can show me documents, you can call witnesses, you can testify yourself. If at any time you do not know what's going on, just raise your hand and ask, and I'll be more than happy to tell you what your options are. I can't tell you what to do, but like a menu, you can pick from column A, pick from column B, whatever you'd like, okay? All right, and if there are people that are here for a case and people that are not here for a case, I will call the cases that have attendance first, and then the ones that no one has shown up for, we'll take those last, because I don't want to waste anybody's time. All right, the first order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. I know that only the staff is here, but does anybody have any comments or additions or deletions from the minutes? No. Okay. Hearing nothing, the minutes are approved. We'll move to initial hearings. The first case is National Retail Properties, LP, 212 South Atlantic Avenue, case number CDEF 2022-02. Is there a representative here for that? Okay, no. So are you here from Sandpoint? All right, then we'll take Sandpoint first and we'll worry about the other case afterwards, okay? Ms. Herstein, is there a person that's been designated with a certificate of representation?
No, Your Honor, but I believe I have 2 board members, including the association president, in attendance, and they would be authorized to speak.
Okay, that was, I circled it.
Her name is Doobie, or her
Doo-
name is Doobie.
Doogie, that, or something like that, yeah.
Legal name.
Okay, yeah, when I was reading that last night, I even circled that with a question mark.
And it's actually Doobie.
Doobie. D-O-B-E-E. And who is that person? You are. Okay. All right, and you're the board president? All right, great. So you'll be authorized to act. All right, Ms. Herstein, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd first like to ask that each of the documents provided by the city and the code enforcement special magistrate notebook for this case be accepted as evidence, along with the slides in the PowerPoint presentation, whether they're shown or just in the packet.
All right. And, ma'am, did you have an opportunity to receive a packet from the city?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could you answer a little louder? We have thousands of fans on YouTube, and they're going to be disappointed if they don't get to hear you. We have 1, maybe 2. But I still need to build a record, so would you mind speaking
Yes,
up a
sir.
little bit? Okay, so you did receive a packet? Is that a yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you have a legal objection to anything in the packet?
I just got it about 5 minutes ago, but I don't.
You want me to give you more time to look through it?
No, sir.
Okay, so you have no legal objection. All right, shall be received into evidence. And Ms. Herstein, since this is the first time this morning, please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is an initial hearing,
Right.
and...
Well, before we proceed, I have one major question. I'm glad Steve is here. Steve, what is a core drilling into an elevator shaft?
A core drill is a machine that basically cuts through concrete with a diamond tip.
Okay,
It's big drill.
and they drilled
And it
into
cuts a round
the,
circle. It cuts like a 1/4-inch groove all the way around. It's an open bit, diamond bit, and it just cores through elevator shaft, which is your concrete shaft.
okay.
Your elevator.
All right, I appreciate that. That wasn't clear, and I spent the whole time wondering what it was. All right, sorry to interrupt, but
Nope,
Please
glad that-
proceed.
Glad that you asked. This is an initial hearing for 4 violations, 3 of which have been fixed, but the last one is pretty important, the one that has not been addressed. These violations were found by Inspector Matt Thomas in November 2021, at which time he issued a stop work order, which you can see on page 5B-6. Within 10 days, applications had been submitted for 2 of the types of stop work, leaving 3 other items needing to be permitted. In light of not having full compliance, on January 28th, a notice of violation was generated and sent. Good service was achieved for that notice. Within weeks, we had permits issued for all but the core drilling into the elevator shaft. So all of the other items were permitted and the application submitted and then the permits obtained. But the core drilling into the elevator shaft was not. So on April 8th, a statement of violation request for hearing and notice of hearing were generated and sent by certified mail. Good service was achieved by mail, certified mail, and also by hand delivery. You can see an affidavit for that on page 5B18 to the office manager, and that was also on April 8th that that happened. By lucky chance, when hand delivering that notice, I had opportunity to meet the association president, Ms. VP, and we discussed the issue, which was great. We were visited by Chris also that day. Chris with Sylvester's Air, a contractor, he has a mechanical contracting license. He stated that he would be making sure the permits were obtained properly for the holes that had been drilled. And I made sure at that point, also Steve made sure at that point that Chris understood that we need engineering, a threshold inspector, and a certified general contractor obtaining the permit, not a mechanical contractor.
Right, so he wasn't qualified to pull that permit.
Correct. I would like to show you the picture that we have, or the pictures that we have of that one item, rather than going through the others. This is a quick screenshot of the permits. This was taken on April 14th. I did check last night, end of business, to make sure that no additional submissions had been made, and it is still much like this, no additional submissions have been made, so we still have the three blue boxes represent the three of the permits pulled to address these other items. Actually, the green box do, so the 4 boxes represent this.
What is the difference between the blue and the green? I had that question last night reading this.
The blue and the green is, there was a difference in my mind when I made it, and now that I'm looking at them, there's no difference, so I apologize for that.
Okay.
This is an image that Inspector Matt Thomas took, and we will bring him up in a minute so that he can testify about taking the pictures and issuing the stop work order. This is what core drilling in an elevator shaft in a block wall looks like. This is a picture from the garage, so it goes from the garage into the elevator shaft, and you can see the picture on the left with the red box around it when it looks like they had just marked it, and then the picture on the right with that marked area fully cut away. It's not meant to be there. It's a problem that it's there for a variety of reasons.
And that's open the way it appears?
It is the way that it appears right now. I have not seen it other than these pictures, and I'm not certain if Inspector Thomas has, but they haven't pulled any permits, so if they have made changes to it, they have not been inspected and approved.
Okay. Ma'am, I will give you a chance after, as I said, it's not an ongoing discussion. It's one side then the other.
I would like to make a recommendation and then call Inspector Thomas to the podium.
Okay.
City staff is requesting that you find the property in violation with an order number 7, meaning that you grant the property owner until August 18th, which is 120 days. Seems like a long time, but there are different people, professionals needing to be involved in the solution to this, the engineering and the permitting. 120 days to correct the violation, and if the violation is not corrected, you impose a fine of $250 per day until it is, including compliance includes final approval on the required permit. So this is getting to the end of the work.
Okay.
Within that 120 days. We also request that you impose reimbursement of administrative fees in the amount of $162.89, an affidavit for which can be found on page 5B22.
Okay, I've had a chance to look at that.
And if we could have Matt Thomas come up to the podium, that would be wonderful.
Just a second. Ma'am, do you have an actual name?
Claudia?
Claudia what?
Mallard?
All right. I'm going to call you Ms. Mallard, just if that's okay. Ms. Mallard, do you have any questions for Ms. Herstein? This is not your chance to testify or tell me that you sealed the hole or whatever, just questions for her. Okay. All right. Please call your next witness, Ms. Herstein.
Inspector Thomas, please.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
And what is your first name?
Matt.
Matt. Inspector Matt Thomas, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Herstein, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hi, Matt. If you wouldn't mind, please state your name, position with the city, and how long you've worked for the city.
Matt Thomas, building inspector, 14 years.
Thank you, Matt. If you would please briefly describe your involvement with this property regarding the pictures that you're seeing right there.
Well, we were there on another inspection. There's this going on, concrete restoration, work in the corridors. So I got a picture of this and issued the stop work order.
Thank you, Matt. And that's the one that I referred to a couple minutes ago, the stop work order in November.
Yes.
Thank you. And do the events as they've been presented by the city to this point represent a true and accurate account of your understanding of the facts of this case?
Yes.
And the documents which have been introduced to the record that you generated represent true and accurate documents that you created or the pictures that you took?
Yes.
Okay, and is there anything else, any other information you'd like to add or clarify to assist the special magistrate with his determinations today?
Nothing at this time.
I have a couple of questions. That black space but behind the two holes, is that an active elevator shaft?
As far as I understand, yes.
With a car moving up and down and,
It probably doesn't go down. This was down in the garage.
so it doesn't go down this far?
Probably not.
Let me ask you this. If somebody sticks their head through the hole, is there a chance they're going to get decapitated?
I believe the car stops at the first floor. It doesn't go to the garage.
Okay.
But, you know, the equipment, all the elevator equipment, the wiring track, whatever's going to extend it.
And what's the purpose of core drilling this wall?
I would guess ventilation of some kind, pressurization maybe.
Okay. So that should have some sort of grate over it?
I'm imagining equipment will be covering that.
Okay.
Yeah, or just a grate.
All right.
It'd have to be fire rated, I would, pretty sure.
Okay. All right. And if you look at it looks like a number 8 down around 4 o'clock on the lower circle. What is that? That black?
In the back of the truck?
Okay, no. All right, on the right-hand side, you see the little red box. And then diagonal from the box, there's something.
That's just a smaller hole that
A
they...
smaller hole?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. I appreciate you answering my questions. Ms. Mellor, do you have any questions for him?
Questions, no.
Okay.
Thank you,
All
ma'am.
right. Thank you. Anything additional, Ms. Herstein?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mellor, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium, raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Okay. You have the options of testifying yourself, calling witnesses, presenting photographs or documents, or you can say nothing. You're not obligated to do anything. What would you like to do?
I'll testify.
Okay, so what would you like to tell me?
Well, that is covered with a grill.
Okay,
And we were told that it was being cut for ventilation in the building by the contractor to correct a pressure issue in the building that was slamming doors. It was also a safety hazard for children getting their fingers cut off, and plus the elevators were stalling. And we were told that elevator shaft needed ventilation to help with the pressure and to help with the frequency of entrapment in the elevators. And it did fix it, but now we've got another problem.
yeah, it's
But
not
there's a
really supposed to
grill-
look like that.
There is a grill, there's a metal grill that completely covers that, and then there are barriers outside that is not accessible by walking up or accidentally, assessing it. It is covered,
Okay,
just so.
I don't know how large it is, but I sure as do not want somebody sticking their head in to see
No.
what in the world's going on and then,
It's like this high by maybe this wide, maybe.
Okay.
Like this, and it's probably the bottom of it, maybe this high off the floor and going up, and it's been covered by I'm not saying they did the right thing, and I'm not saying they did it properly, but it is covered by a grid, much like you would see on a return air conditioner with very small louvers that allows the ventilation, but the whole area is not accessible.
okay, great. Do you understand why you're here today?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to tell me?
Sure.
All right. The city is asking me to find you in violation and give you until August 18th, which is quite honestly much longer than we usually give somebody to correct the problem.
And I think that's very generous.
Well, wait a second. Is that enough time?
I believe so.
Okay, I don't believe in giving people impossible deadlines.
Right.
So I want something that you can meet. So you believe that you can meet by August 18th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other witness you'd like to call or anything like that? All right. I'm going to find Sandpoint Condominium.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I apologize. We have a couple questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Would it be acceptable, because they're technical questions for understanding of the case and how this happened and is continuing, would it be acceptable for the Plans Examiner Edmonds to ask the questions?
Certainly. He's a city official.
I just have a couple of questions in your hole there. You said you were doing it for elevator ventilation. Was it your elevator contractor that recommended this, or was it just an AC contractor?
It was an AC contractor that was working on the, what we had was a huge reverse pressure, humidity, water running down the walls, hot air gushing out of the elevator shaft, mold growing inside of the building. And I had engineer after everybody trying to help me, and I'm gonna say in Mr. Sylvester's defense, he made some mistakes on not getting permits, but he's the only one that tried to help me solve this issue.
Well, not to cut you off, but one of the issues is with that, because like I say, because you did not get an elevator contractor, there's several things that doesn't meet code with this by an elevator contractor, and so when you go for your state elevator inspection,
Right.
your
Which is
elevator's gonna
coming
be
up.
failing.
Yeah, which is
Because you
coming
can't
up.
have any type of lips in your elevator shaft for them to set any kind of tools on that could fall down the shaft later. One, it's also a 2-hour fire rating around that shaft. And that's why I was questioning if you had that elevator, because there's things that when you go to do your state elevator inspection now are gonna be failing. Just a grill, like a grill over that thing just to let air through is not even allowed by code. So they're gonna be having to do a lot more different things, and even if the city approves that, that type of repair, it still has to go through a state elevator inspector as well. And that's through the state of Florida, and that's not through us. So that's something that you're gonna have to also be aware of, is you will need a state elevator contractor that will coordinate with you on this, as well as having the structural engineer and the threshold engineer that does the inspection of it.
I totally understand, and I may be looking to you for recommendations, or not recommendations, but a list of options.
Yeah, like I say, we don't do the state. You're gonna really have to get a hold of, you should call your elevator contractor before your state inspection, because I can tell you just from looking at the picture, it's gonna fail. So that's something you probably wanna get with them ahead of time, is call them and say, hey, this is what we're looking at doing. Is it even possible, before you get down that road later and do all this work to get the threshold, and get a threshold inspector, get an engineer, and then come find out that you can't even do it at that point because of your state elevator inspection. So, because that's not controlled by the city, it's controlled by the state. So just want to make her aware of those things, to contact those same people.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that.
I appreciate your help.
No problem.
All right, Ms. Mellard, I'm going to find the condominium in violation. After hearing Mr. Edmonds discuss this with you, I am extremely familiar with the workings of the city of Daytona Beach Shores. They bend over backwards to run out there at a moment's notice and have a look. I do not have any idea how compliant the state of Florida is. So I'm going to give you an extra 30 days. So I'm going to give you till 150 days, September 18th, to rectify the violation. If you're unable to rectify the violation, then I'm going to order a $250 a day fine, and presently $162.89 in administrative costs. Can your association pay that within 30 days?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so $162.89 within 30 days. Get this taken care of within 150, or it gets very expensive. I imagine this is going to be very expensive to begin
For
with.
some reason, the state delays us, do we contact?
You absolutely would be in your best interest to call Ms. Herstein and stay in constant contact with her. This is not, I'm sorry you failed. We do not want code violations. We do not want to fine people. We want things to work and never hear about them again. So,
I understand it.
draconian here.
I have multiple units in a building, and I don't want code violations in a building that I've got a lot of skin in the deal in either.
Right. Well, that's why you're the president, to look after your own investment, right?
Exactly right.
Okay. Anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you for coming this morning.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, and back up. I have not noticed anyone else come in, but I've been concentrating on what we've been doing. Is there a representative from National Retail Properties here? Okay, seeing nobody anxious to speak up. We're going to call that case. It is CDEF 2022-2. Ms. Herstein, you've been previously sworn.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any idea why? There's no one here? This is a national company.
I still have not, other than the calls that I've made to managers at the site are great. They're extremely busy. So I didn't necessarily anticipate that one of those folks would be here. But I haven't been called. I've been called by contractors working for Dollar General, but I have not been called by anybody who would have received the notice of violation since it was received, and that includes the email that I sent to the district manager.
Does Dollar General actually own the property?
National Retail Properties owns the property, and I believe that is, but I'm not certain, so I probably ought to not say. I think that's
Because, yeah, I looked at the tombstone on the Secretary of State that you provided to me, and there was no clear indication as to who was whom because, they're hidden behind letters.
exactly. So I'm not certain. And
Okay, well, please proceed.
thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to ask that each of the documents provided by the city in the Code Enforcement Special Magistrate Notebook for this case be accepted as evidence, along with the slides in the PowerPoint program, which will be shown.
Okay, hearing no objection, they'll be accepted.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is also an initial hearing for 27 violations at the Dollar General, which are first investigated. Basically, there's a row of untrimmed palms that were regularly dumping fronds. They're right at the property line. They were regularly dumping fronds on an adjoining neighbor's property.
The car wash, right?
Exactly, and that adjoining neighbor was under code enforcement action and was currently being fined. And so I was watching that happen, realizing that they might do everything they needed to do at some point, but still be having this, this other trees dumping more debris on their property. So I reached out to Dollar General. There was also a hole up by the sidewalk that was surrounded by orange netting, and grass had grown up through the netting and had been there a long time. So I reached out to them to ask them to address those items, and that was in January. I spoke with the GM, Laura, who has been there for many years, and then the district manager, John Stein. They had tried to get the trees trimmed already. They said they'd made multiple requests through whatever
Bless you.
methods,
Excuse me.
Okay.
whichever methods that they use to have things like that done. They tried to get the trees trimmed, the vegetation taken care of, and other issues that were happening, other work done that they needed with the corporate office, but they weren't being heard, they weren't being addressed, those issues. I was told by more than one individual who works for Dollar General that a notice of violation would actually be helpful to them, because they could then propel that forward as the reason that they needed these things done. I generated one and sent it on January 5th. Good service was achieved. I started hearing from a gentleman named Rick. He's with Scopes Facility Services, strictly about the landscaping. Apparently the regular landscapers who go are paid simply to mow down grass and weeds. When plants die, they're not paid to replace them, they're not paid to trim trees, they're not paid to do anything regularly other than simply mow.
Cut the grass, okay.
And anything beyond that, they need to get approval for. I supplied him with the landscape plan, and I have a visual copy that's going to go on a slide. I also have a paper copy if you're interested in seeing it for any reason. But I supplied him with the landscape plans showing all of the plants that were installed in 2011 when Dollar General was opened and approved. And they're required to be there. They're required to stay there. They're not just required when the property opens. They're required to be present and replaced as necessary if one dies or what have you.
I'm interested in your interaction with somebody named Technician Tom Cross.
Yes, Your Honor, that was an
It seems a little belligerent,
interesting-
not on your part, but on his.
I try not to put anything disparaging in notes. I hope I didn't do that, but it was somehow I conveyed accurately that it was not a. I didn't get the sense that Tom was in favor of rules like permitting, state permitting requirements.
Okay.
And yes,
And who is he? You
he's a
label him
mechanical-
technician.
He works for a mechanical contractor and apparently was the one who did the unpermitted work on the units.
Oh, okay.
So originally, and I'll show you in the pictures with the violations, the violation was written for plates that had been installed over exterior ducts, which I'll show you, that had rusted out. They just tacked some metal plates on them. While we were discussing how he would permit what he had done, he asked if he also needed to permit the new units. And while taking the pictures and looking at the pictures, I wasn't able to establish that any units were new, but I did tell Mr. Cross that when the inspectors were at the site, they would clearly be able to see if units had been replaced, and if he had replaced units there, obviously those had no permits either, so he really ought to, and it would be found out then and be a second layer, he really ought, or even a repeat violation, he really ought to go ahead and just permit everything that he had done there. And he said he understood. I spoke with him twice. He spoke with Steve, asked some questions about exactly what Steve would need to be submitted for the duct work that had been done. To the point of, last night, end of business, we still have not seen any submissions from that company or any other to rectify this issue. If Mr. Cross with CMS Mechanical, chooses not to follow through with it, Dollar General is able to bring in another mechanical contractor to do after-the-fact permitting, which is exactly what Mr. Cross would need to do at this point. So they have other options.
I know that you don't work for anybody else, but are there municipalities that do not have code sections that you can just go in and replace ductwork or air conditioning units and walk away?
They shouldn't. It's mandated by the state. It's in the Florida statutes.
Right.
It's a statutory requirement. It's not something that the city of Daytona Beach Shores chooses to go above and beyond and do.
It just strikes me as odd that somebody would hold themselves out as a mechanical contractor and is completely oblivious to the nature of permitting.
Then it struck you the same way it struck me.
Okay.
I had another conversation with Mr. Scopes, with Rick from Scopes, the landscaper. Actually, he provided fairly regular updates about, they were going to have to basically replace all the irrigation, or at the very least fix it all, make sure and replace some of it, before they put the plants in. That only makes sense. But apparently the irrigation was not working. They had trouble locating the line. I directed them back to the plans. They were having some trouble finding it looked like it had been capped off at one point, from what he said. They'd also had trouble locating the plants. I mean, he could see how many plants he needed by comparing the landscape plan that was approved and the way everything was initially installed to what was there now. And it's pretty stark difference. So he kept in contact with me, and it felt like we were just about there. And then unfortunately, he stopped reaching out or hasn't reached out for a longer period, we'll say, and nothing has come to pass. None of those changes have been made. And I'll show you.
I'm wondering what happened to all the plants that he located and purchased. He never installed them.
Perhaps he didn't purchase them, perhaps he had located them, meaning, I'm talking with somebody in North Florida who has this number of ligustrums that I need, and they're gonna hold them for me, that kind of thing. It may be a matter of not being, getting the funding. I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't been told. So nobody followed through with any of these items at this point. I will say, however, that some of the work, I re-inspected the violations on April 7th, not having heard from anybody about this other than those two contractors that I told you about, Rick and then also Tom Cross. I re-inspected April 7th, saw that 4 violations of the 27 had been addressed. One, there was a climbing vine up the building. They took that down, and it looks like they painted where that vine had been. Although it's still fully up in the gutter, it's still there, but I hadn't written them for that. Number 2, work was done on the roof dormers and the cupola, which they actually did replace some of the shutters. They didn't fully get us there all the way with those, but they did a lot of work up on the roof. You can see the cupola in that picture that's up. And the hole near the sidewalk was filled by AT&T because I called AT&T.
Okay.
They on site, they had no knowledge of who had even done that work. So I took some pictures, showed the inspectors, and they were able to say it looks like an AT&T situation, and AT&T maybe had forgotten that they had dug the hole. I mean,
Just
they're busy.
left a hole?
They left the hole, but they came out promptly, filled in the hole, and then put some sod over it. So good on them. Other work was done on the building, mostly painting, but a lot of it did. While it brought the property forward to some degree. It didn't fully rectify other violations than those 4. Many are closer to compliance, and I'll show you pictures of that, but not fully compliant. So I did send a statement of violation request for hearing and notice of hearing for today's meeting. Good service was achieved by certified mail, but also by hand delivery to the manager on duty, who was Brian. I'd like to make a recommendation, but first I do want to take you briefly through the violations and the pictures.
Okay.
Okay, violation A, exterior AC ducts were repaired without permits. You can see those plates in the left-hand pictures, up and down. You can see those metal plates. Those were not part of the original install. They were placed over places which had become rusted, deteriorated. Not sure what's under the plates, but clearly there was a need to put them in. I put the picture on the bottom right to show you what I'm describing as exterior ducts. Sometimes for a big space that's open like this, a lot of times the ducting will go in from the outside, and that's what you see lined up there above the mechanical units. Here is a screenshot as of April 14th, 1:54 in the afternoon, and I checked yesterday evening to make sure that nothing had been updated from here. This is a screenshot showing basically all of the permitting since late 2012 at the property.
Right, and 2018 was the last permit.
Correct.
That-
And that's definitely what I want you to see. Violation C, required landscape plants have died in places along all sides of property. Some have not been removed, none have been replaced, that I can tell. So I'm giving you 4 slides here of different places around the building. This happens to be the southwest corner of the building, and I'm just showing you that landscape island in the top picture. And then the picture below is what that same landscape island looks like now. The 2 trees are still there, but of the 19 plants that were originally placed there, it looks like maybe 5 are there still, maybe 6,
Wow.
and still dead. You know, it looks like one has some leaves, there may be a couple leaves elsewhere.
Lack of an irrigation system will do that.
That'll do it, it certainly will. Violation, again, violation C, this is from the west property line, and you can see that top picture, and I apologize, I didn't purposely make the original pictures bright and beautiful, and then the others, you know, were overcast. I didn't do that on purpose, but it does certainly add to the whole feeling of it. When you can see shortly after install all of those plants in place below the palms. The palms are still there, and they've fleshed out and are nice, but a lot of what was down below has been, has died and either just been pulled out and removed, is in ill health. All of the smaller bushes that you see between the ligustrums are gone. I don't see, except maybe on that far left, area of the picture, the far south, there may be a couple there, but they're not anywhere else. That was the picture with the orange-yellow marker was taken on January 4th, and then the re-inspect picture shows that nothing has changed as of April 7th, or as of yesterday. The other piece to this is that between commercial properties and residential areas, there's required to be a 6-foot opaque barrier. It can be a wall, it can be an opaque fence. With this development agreement, or what happened when this building was built, they were allowed to put in this basically wall of vegetation because it was viewed to be, agreeable as a barrier, as long
Bigger
as
than a
it's
wall,
kept up.
yeah.
But in this case, it's no longer, they're no longer providing that barrier by letting the plants die. This is the northeast corner of the building, top of the install. This is shortly after install. You can see those palms are just starting to wake up, and all those beautiful pink, which I knew the name for but can't tell you right now. Stuart could, he's in the back probably thinking of it. You can see the January 4th picture down lower left, and it looks like most of them are gone, most of the pink plants, and then you can see in my bottom right, maybe one of them, possibly a second in the far right is still there, but the rest of them are just...
Doesn't look like they've bothered with the mulch since
mulch
install either.
The mulch is this is the northeast corner of the property along the sidewalk. The top is not immediately after install, but after the plants had really taken hold and had gotten lots of rain and irrigation. And you can see how a lot of the plants are simply missing in both the January 4th and the April 7th picture. Consequently, you can see that orange netted whole area around the January 4th picture, and it's gone on the April 7th picture. Okay, so this is what the landscape plan looks like, and the blue box, this was a plan that was approved for the 2011 install. The blue box is around is basically the area that I want to focus on with the next slide. So we're just going to basically blow that up. You can see very clearly it states the number of different types of plants, and there's a legend that matches up to the type of plant that is being called for. The red box area is around that landscape island that I showed you earlier, and I put a little blue circle around the requirement for 19 plants in that area, where you can now see maybe 5 or 6, just as one example of many. Violation D and AA, cut palm stump remains on the north side of the building, not replaced. You can see that it still was there on April 7th. Outdoor storage, violation F, outdoor storage of box carts, racks, and pallets west of building. They were there January 4th, and they were there and how on April 7th. Violation G, loose trash and debris in places on the north side of the building. There was some on January 4th. There was more on April 7th when I went back. Some of that same stuff was there, and then just others scattered around that area, mainly on the north side of the building. Violation H, an electrical panel box covered with rust, west building face. I couldn't see this from the right-of-way. It was occluded by the pallets full of the carts of boxes and the other things that were back there. So I did ask the manager if he'd take me out there, and he did, and he was very accommodating. He just took me right out the back door and showed me that hadn't been addressed. Violation I, rust in places on building, including door hinges and trim. You can see them in the orange circles on the top left. And then those were actually painted. They did paint that area, the hinges and the trim. But there's still rust in other places. That happens to be the cupola. That rust hasn't been addressed. So while they did carry it forward, they did not rectify fully all of that violation either. Violation J, paint is streaked and deteriorated, discolored in places on the building. These are just a couple examples. The top picture showing obviously that one under the lamp, which was painted over. And then if you look at the far left side of that building in the upper left-hand corner, you can clearly see streaks coming down in a gray, makes like a gray shadow. There are still, while they've addressed, I'd say, the worst of them, there are still plenty of places you can see streaks down the building that they haven't addressed. There's one right above that awning in the bottom left picture that you can see going all the way up to the ceiling. And then around some of the dormers, you can see those circles that I've given you. The areas down there are still mildew or molded and discolored in places. Violation K, metal roof sheets are rusted in places. You can see that it didn't change much from January 4th to April 7th, although maybe got a little bit worse. And it's not just the rust that you see at the bottom of the dormer. There are places that attachment, like nails, have been have rusted as well. Violation L and P, exterior AC ducts are rusted and discolored by mold in places, and exterior AC ducts have rusted through in places. And so you can see the mold in the upper left, you can see the rust. And I tried to show you in the follow-up pictures places where there are actual holes, like it's open still. So even though they put a plate over it, it has either increased or the plate wasn't big enough, and that's part of that unpermitted work. Decorative exterior pieces broken in places, including a missing shingle and trim on the west gable end of the building. They fixed the trim, they just painted behind the shingle. They didn't bother putting another shingle up. And while, I wouldn't have written this property if that had been the only violation. I've got much more to do that's more important than a missing shingle. But we've been there. You just need to fix it properly while you're fixing these violations, not just go, well, that's good enough. This was one of the dormers, shutters and louvers broken in places on dormers and building. They did take care of what you see in the upper left pictures, but as you can see, it's not fully taken care of. There's still broken louvers, and you can see that the soffit is still dangling down a little bit. It's not fully secured up there, which means that it's only, in a matter of time, that soffit is going to again look like the soffit just above it.
Did they manage to find the worst possible contractor in the entire city?
If I knew who that contractor was, I would be able to answer that question. Although I really shouldn't.
It looks like I fixed it and tried to get away with something.
Did you, Your Honor? I hope you were safe and on the way. Violation Q, face is covered by rust on the west cupola. That's still just the way that it was. And I'm showing you a little bit more of those attachments. Violation R, gutter and soffit discolored in places. You can see it in the upper pictures. You can see it just the same in the lower pictures. Violation S, soffit falling and missing in places on dormers. Again, it's something that we've just looked at, but another way to state that violation. Additionally, the bottom left picture is one that they used like a totally different kind of material, and it's not holding. It's already gapped, and it's going to fall out the next time we get a brisk wind.
Maybe they shop at their own store for materials.
Well, disturbingly, one of the conversations that I had about Dollar General, which is a very popular store, it's very trafficked and visited. There are always people coming and going. I think they do a lot of business, and they're valuable to be in the shores. One of these folks that I spoke with, not at the store level, but one of the other managers basically said in the beginning, we're a discount store, meaning it's not gonna look like the Taj Mahal. And I said, I beg your pardon, but you're a multi-million-dollar corporation.
Right. It's
So-
not some mom and pop that's providing a vital service, like they're the only food store within 30 miles, and they're just hanging on. I agree with you. I was surprised when I opened the binder and to see them.
I got the impression, well, I guess I shouldn't really talk about impressions, I don't need to say any more about it, but the violation T, guardrail and bollards rusted south side of building. You can see the upper 3 pictures showing examples of that, and then just the same in the April 7th pictures below. U, dumpster enclosure post rusted south side of enclosure that has not been rectified. V, multiple white lampshades rusted around building. You can see it on the edges in the upper right picture. You can see it kind of in the edges around the shades. Obviously, the shade is in the upper left is clearly rusted away. This is a picture of the shade again. They gave it a shot, but within maybe a month of it being done, I don't know when it was done because nobody called me to say come look. Within a month, it's already rusting through in that area. So what's that going to look like in 4 months?
Is that upper right picture an example of what you said, the awning was two-toned, white and silver?
Yes, and they did address that.
Okay.
Violation W, sign and sign base discolored, paint peeling in places east of building. So you can see the upper left corner, those 3 pictures are all the January 4th taken initially, and I gave you 2 pictures showing that nothing has changed with that. It's the same. The peeling part is just that little spot that you can see at the side of the cabinet. So in between the 2 yellow cabinets, the part that is thinner, you can see where there's a silver patch. That's where the paint is peeling. But it's very discolored. Should be an easy fix. Violation X, dead palm fronds remain untrimmed in places, especially along south property line. Fronds drop and slide to neighbor's property. You can see upper left the picture of the Washingtonian palms, not trimmed at all, and you can see it looks a little bit even more that way on the April 7th picture below it. And then I gave you on the right, this is not an exact property line. There is, but the yellow line is kind of showing that's where all the fronds are ending up on the neighbor's property from those Washingtonian palms. And there's a jog in this property. That's why they have the bottom line going off to the right. So there's like a patch, a jog. That's the only way I can describe it. But that's not important. I just wanted to tell you why the line was that way. Violation Y, grass and weeds are overgrown in specific places near east and west property lines. I think the pictures speak for themselves, and there has been no change between the January 4th and April 7th pictures. Generally, the grass and weeds are maintained and are trimmed, but sometimes a weed gets so out of control it becomes like a new plant at the site and is just left that way, I guess. City staff is requesting that you find the property in violation with an order number 7, that you grant the property owner until July 19th, which is 90 days to correct the violations, and that if the violations are not corrected, you impose a fine of $250 per day until they are corrected, including obtaining approved final inspections on all required permits. We also request you impose $149.09 in administrative fees, for which an affidavit can be found on page 5A32. And the violations that we are asking you to find were the ones that I just showed you pictures of, and they are listed as A, C, D, F through M, O through Y, and double A.
Okay. Seeing no one is here to present for the landlord, I'm going to find a violation, issue an order number 7 as to all of the violations you just listed. Require that they be rectified by July 19th and a final inspection, or $250 per day shall run, $149.90 within 30 days.
Your Honor, I had asked for 9 cents instead of 90.
Oh, I'm
That's the 81.
sorry, we're not taking 81 cents we're not entitled to. I misheard you. Okay. Funny, Congress will make $1 billion mistake and nobody bothers to correct it. Okay, 14909 within 30 days. I believe that concludes any business that we have, unless there's anything else. Next code enforcement meeting will be Wednesday, May 18th at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, that'll be interesting. Okay. The day before is my 25th wedding anniversary, and I have no plans at all because she keeps vetoing things. So I'm pretty sure I'll be here. We were going to go to Iceland for the weekend, and she decided not to. We're going to London for the weekend, 2 weekends afterwards, and I tried to say that was good, but no.
I think if I were going to go to Iceland, I would stay longer than we
Well-
did, but I know you're busy.
Yes, and United Airlines has these peculiar specials where they have very low mileage requirements. Like London was 22,000 miles round trip, which, give you an example, going